Each year, there's a big fundraiser for the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this fundraiser is called the Met Ball.
It's the most glamorous soiree in New York's social calendar.
I must have gone to 20 Met Balls in my life. It brought the luxury of fashion to the masses. The Met Ball had been in existence for a while, but Anna brought a modernity to it and a presentation that went beyond the core audience.
In December 1996, the Met Ball was dedicated to Dior for the 50th anniversary of the house.
So what brings you out this beautiful evening? This dress.
And the honored guest would be Princess Diana. As his very first Dior creation at his new job, John Galliano was tasked by Arnault with designing a gown for Diana to wear.
It's because she likes Galliano. Galliano is also British. She knows him.
So she rolled out of her limousine in this midnight blue satin and lace sheath. But it was not as successful as one had hoped. The fashion press just tore it to bits. English papers said Diana went to the Met in her nightie. But there was a very strange phenomenon afterwards. Diana was photographed carrying this lovely little handbag that had a caning imprint on it. That picture went viral, and she was such a style leader. Boom. Sales of that bag went through the roof, and that bag quickly was redubbed the Lady Di bag. From that moment on, Arnault saw the potential of handbags and of accessories. If you get them on the right celebrities, they will sell like gangbusters and make you so much money.
When you dream, you can do things that are impossible.
If you believe in something, you have to do it to the end.
You have to go to the extreme to cancel down to the norm. And I am the extreme.
Money is a terrible drug.
Questa mattina Maurizio Gucci è stato ucciso a colpi di arma da fuoco mentre arrivava nel suo ufficio di Via Palestro a Milano.
I was in Milan, I was getting ready to go to work, and I got a phone call from one of my reporters who said, "Sarah, have you heard the news?" "No, what happened?" "Maurizio Gucci's been shot." Oh my God. Our office was right around the corner from Via Palestro, from the doorway where he was going to work that morning. I ran down, and already there was a huge crowd of photographers and reporters. And the police had already gotten there, and it was cordoned off. And they were about to carry his body out on the stretcher.
Maurizio Gucci, heir to the Gucci fashion empire, was gunned down as he walked into his office building in central Milan.
Witnesses say the well-dressed gunman was then driven off by an accomplice. Police would say nothing about a motive for the killing.
There was the question of, was this some sort of twisted, financial settling of bets? And it was a mystery.
Maurizio Gucci lived his life in the spotlight, often embroiled in family feuding over control of the multi-million-dollar fashion empire.
Gucci was really a family-owned company that was rife with dysfunction and sort of interpersonal battles.
Did you say, if they're going to kill me, I shall kill them?
Yes, I say from the beginning, yes, absolutely.
They have always been fighting.
And you're saying that's the Italian way?
This is the Italian way, in particular in this family.
Who was it who hit you in the head?
It was my father. I heard this thing around my neck, this arm, and there was blood coming from down my face.
He thinks that you hit him.
No.
The company was a major name, but it had fallen upon very hard times. And if I may, was going to hell in a handbag.
They were not paying suppliers. There were strikes in the stores. It was really bad, very, very bad. Most of our work at that time was to send out samples to magazines so that they were getting photographed. And I didn't have any samples to send out because there was no budget to buy samples. So we were all paralyzed.
There was an effort to sell it. And they put it on the market, not overtly, but we're asking around if there was any interest.
Combien pèse votre empire? Est-ce que vous en connaissez les limites, Bernard Arnault?
Il pèse un certain nombre de marques, environ 45.
Et est-ce que ça vous crée une obligation d'être ainsi l'homme le plus riche de France?
L'aspect matériel des choses n'a jamais été une motivation pour moi. Ce qui me motive, moi, c'est de faire gagner mon entreprise, c'est d'essayer de la porter à la première place dans le monde. C'est ça qui me motive le plus.
Bernard Arnault was really a visionary. He was building a luxury goods empire because he saw that all these French brands could be powerhouse players in a global marketplace.
Voilà.
He had moved in on countless companies. It was Vuitton, it was Dior, it was many. And that's how he built up his stable of brands. The track record of Arnault was that when he set his sights on a company, he moved in and he took no prisoners. He was seen as a shark. So Arnault actually took a look at Gucci, but he rejected it because he didn't think it was going to be worth his while. The view at that time was that it was never going to make any money.
The Gucci family was desperate to keep the company going. And they didn't really know a lot about business, so they were running the company into the ground. But one of the wisest things they did was hire Domenico De Sole, this Harvard-educated Italian lawyer.
When I arrived there, Gucci was really a broken company. The company was bleeding. It was losing a lot of money. It was almost bankrupt. It was viewed by the fashion universe as being a brand in decline.
He had big ambitions and a big vision from the very start. There was talk about bringing in a big-name designer, and they realized they didn't have the money to do that. And so they decided to look inside, and there was Tom Ford. Tom was the knitwear designer at Gucci, so he was working on the women's collection, and he was designing knitwear.
You have to be ready for those moments, those lucky moments to cross your path, and you have to seize them.
In life, being lucky is much better than being smart, because as much as I thought that Tom was terrific, I never imagined that he turned out to be a genius.
Tom is from Texas. He grew up in a middle-class Texas family, and he, would talk about how it was tough for him because he was not like the guy who wanted to be on the football team. He was in love with fashion, and his mother and his aunt, were beautiful dressers, and so he was very inspired by fashionable women from the start.
I didn't have any fashion experience. I drew up a portfolio of things I thought were the right things, targeted people I wanted to work for, and I just called. I didn't think it would be any harder to make it as a fashion designer in Europe than it would be in America. And if you made it in Europe, you were instantly globally marketable. And that attracted me. And so I moved to Italy and started working at Gucci.
I remember I drove up to Milan to tell him that, Tom, I would like you to be the creative director. Tom was somewhat concerned. And I said to him, either we can turn the company around and succeed, or the company will be sold. I said, look, you design, I run the company, it will be okay, or at least we give it a try.
The company was in such bad financial shape that they weren't even looking at me. They didn't care what I designed, whatever, fine, great. So I had this moment to basically do whatever I wanted and do what I thought was right. And I took it.
I knew that we're running out of time. I really felt that it was very, very important to have a successful show.
When we were preparing for the show, we had a sense and a feeling that things were changing. We saw that it was completely different from everything that was done at Gucci before.
The right thing at the right time is the right thing. The right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. So, it's got to be the thing that people want before they know they want it.
The name of Tom Ford was already circulating among the fashion insiders, and there was a lot of expectation there. That's one of the mystery of fashion. The buzz grows, and you exactly don't know why. And that's exactly what happened before that show.
It was really the future of Gucci that was at stake. And if they didn't make it work, it was either going to be sold or it was going to be unwound. And so they had to make it work.
He brought sex, like just unadulterated sex, back into fashion.
That was like sharp, super sexy. I mean, you could smell, that there was that kind of sexy and so modern.
It was a gorgeous Hollywood, louche, velvet hipster jeans and satin blouses, unbuttoned. The most incredibly coherent and seductive revamping of Gucci.
It was actually in my contract at the time that I was not to appear on the runway or talk to the press. So I took a risk. I thought, this collection I feel very strongly about. I'm stepping on to that runway. And I did.
Until I really saw the end, that people were just freaking out. There was a huge applause and people were jumping up and down. I was always, I'm a kind of calm person, and I try to see the results. This was my life in a way.
And suddenly, everybody wanted to be part of the Gucci tribe because it was just so hot. And Tom was so hot. And the look was so hot.
Madonna fell in love with the collection. And then, a couple of weeks later, she is at the MTV Awards wearing Gucci head to toe. We could have never thought at Gucci before Tom that somebody like Madonna would choose to wear Gucci.
And it's funny because the clothes give them a reason to have the fashion show. But in the end, every model had a new Gucci bag in her hand, and that's where they were making money.
Even when we work on the first shows, we always not add bags, create bags to go with the look. The bag was as important as the coat or as the shoes. So the bag was created to match the clothes, to match the shirt. It was really a part of the silhouette.
In the end, it's all about handbags. The beauty of handbags is that the markup is enormous. The average handbag was marked up 25 to 30 times. If it cost $100 to make, they're going to sell it to you for $2,500. And nobody understood that formula better than Tom Ford. Louis Vuitton was Bernard Arnault's luxury leather goods house. For 120 years, Vuitton had produced more or less one design, and that was that canvas with the LVs on it, the brown canvas. They were old, they were musty, they were boring. Of course, Bernard Arnault saw what Tom Ford was doing at Gucci, and he said, let's do a Gucci at Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton was already $1 billion brand at this time, but it only made luggage and small leather goods. And Mr. Arnault's vision for Louis Vuitton was to be a big, ready-to-wear global brand.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do like Gucci did. We're gonna introduce ready-to-wear, and then we're gonna dress the models down the runway in this ready-to-wear, but then they're gonna all carry these bags, and we're gonna sell all the bags. The clothes are the backdrop to the handbags.
It was a brand building exercise. If Gucci had their hot American designer, then an American designer at Vuitton would have made a lot of sense as a sort of counterpoint.
Parsons was the best school in fashion design in the US. When I was there, nobody knew about Tom Ford at that time. There was another brilliant designer there called Marc Jacobs. It was all about Marc Jacobs, he was the star, etc. All the students were looking up to him, very much like a so-called young hippie.
America is really where it's happening right now. I think the Americans have been doing what they've been doing for a long time, but time has changed, and the time is really right for it. Somehow, a lot of the European designers, it all looks very staid, very stagnant.
Me too. Sleeve's a little bit too short, too.
One day, my friend phoned me up and she said, there's this really cool kid out of New York that I really think you should meet. His name's Marc Jacobs. You just got to meet this kid. He's fabulous. I'm like, okay, fine, I will. What? You know, this young Jewish guy from New York, you know, sounded hip.
It's also sexy, but it's really,
well,
like, it's not overstated sexy. It's just like funky, like you're not trying too hard.
I met him and was like, what a cutie. You know, he had hair down to his elbows. He was very sweet. And he had such a fresh attitude. And it really felt for me that maybe we had all been taking fashion a little too seriously. So here was Marc to, you know, shake it up.
For me, fashion is a form of entertainment. It is not a necessity. We all need to wear clothes, but we don't need to wear designer clothes. So the idea of sitting down and think, what does my customer need, is like not the business I chose to be in. Do you know what I mean? If I were really doing that, I would want to be a designer for the Gap. That's real life. That is not stuff that fantasies are made out of.
When most of us pick up on the Marc Jacobs story, he has landed a really plum job at Perry Ellis, where he's the design director.
Perry Ellis, you know, was very classic, very preppy, very well respected, but very conservative. So to bring someone like Mark on board, you know, you knew, okay, something's got to change. Like Mark wasn't going to do like, you know, button-down shirts and blazers. I mean, Mark was going to do, who knows what he was going to do.
Marc Jacobs startled the New York fashion scene when he introduced a most unusual collection for the House of Perriells. It became known as the Grunge Collection.
Music and street culture has always been a very, very big influence on what I do. So I wanted to create a collection that basically was visual noise. We clashed patterns and stripes and colors, and we layered it. I mean, girls were wearing 10 layers of clothes. I mean, of course, they were all very fine. So it was a very deluxe version of this grunge attitude.
I was actually at that show. We were all scratching our heads like, is this fashion? These are clothes that you could buy at the Salvation Army for $1 or 25 cents. And suddenly, you know, Mark is putting a $300 price tag on it for Perriellos. Well, that was pretty preposterous.
What the heck is going on here? They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but wait till you behold what some top designers are showing as high fashion for the spring. Where did this stuff come from, and do they really expect people to dress in this stuff?
Well, it's the outflowing of a mass nervous breakdown on the part of the fashion business. This is lemmings going over a cliff.
But Mark was onto something, because he was now starting to look at fashion in a new way that was kind of bohemian, that had a lot of edge, and it also was kind of a streetwear look.
We thought that collection was, wow, it's incredible, it just brought something new. But obviously, it was only fashion people who understood it. Boom, he got fired. But that made him the star, because he was the rebel.
If you look at what Marc Jacobs did with Perriellos, if you look at that subversiveness and that vision, he might have looked like a funny little college boy, but he obviously had things going on in his head. I think you do those things to court fate, you know? You do something that's so provocative to court fate and let the chips fall where they may.
The fashion cognoscenti loved him, and Wintour wore his clothes, and he definitely had a critical mass of cool kids who wore and dug Marc Jacobs.
He's clearly getting Anna's stamp of approval as the next big thing in American fashion. Part of her role was putting forward designers for certain houses. She's a matchmaker, and she was sort of anointing him as the way forward.
That was a fabulous decision to put Marc Jacobs into Vuitton, because Vuitton had no fashion component. Vuitton was a luggage brand.
9 out of 10 people I know would say luggage.
Right, exactly. But it is a good name. It represents a very high quality product. It's a very expensive product. It's a very prestigious product. All the things that I like.
So Arnaud tapped Marc Jacobs to invent a Louis Vuitton ready-to-wear line.
Marc, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
This was an opportunity to realize ambition on a scale that had never, ever been available to anyone before in fashion.
Marc Jacobs brings to the house his casual US approach of fashion and a very good taste.
It was going to be a huge gamble, and Mark in particular, because he was so irreverent and such a bad boy, and not someone who I thought even thought about the bottom line.
I think it's really a time to try and maybe push things a little bit further, maybe take a few chances. You know, just give it a try and see what happens.
I remember very clearly the sun streaming in. We were all waiting, kind of very very excited to see what it would be.
If you could say anything about Marc Jacobs' debut at Louis Vuitton, it was tentative, I guess. There were no bags to be seen, which was quite a bold statement to make with an accessories brand.
Là, j'étais un petit peu, comment dirais-je, étonné parce que dans le premier défilé, il n'y avait pas un sac.
I suppose people expected more after the huge step of putting an American designer in charge of the launch of Vuitton's clothing. A little more, maybe pizzazz.
It's a failure. It flops.
Criticism is very difficult to take because you work so hard and so many people work so hard. But in the end, I just have to, I just did what I thought was right.
He was perversely good at defying expectations. If you think I'm going to do that, I'm not going to. And I'm going to do something else.
I imagine Marc must have been quite insecure at the beginning of his Vuitton tenure, trying to please Monsieur Arnault and have financial success with his first collection. It was not very successful, and he probably wasn't the apple of Monsieur Arnault's eyes in that moment. We visited him a couple times in Paris. As someone familiar with drug addiction, I could see there were signs that he was a little unraveled. It must have been really, really hard for him.
Do you have any problems? Sometimes.
Do I have any problems? You got an hour?
Because I lived in the same building as Marc, I saw him spiraling downward very terribly. It was upsetting to see someone visibly cracking under the pressure.
When I pick up a drink or when I choose to pick up a drug, it gets out of control. I'm not happy and full of life when I'm hauled up in a hotel room, on my third bottle of vodka and not answering the phone because I didn't show up for work.
I'm certain that Anna was very concerned. He was her golden boy and kind of her responsibility because she had pitched him to Louis Vuitton. So I'm sure she took some emotional and other efforts at control and help.
One day, a team of friends swooped in and sent Marc off to rehab. Bernard Arnault was extremely supportive of his star designers, and he really did believe in them. But his goals and their goals were different. For them, money was the byproduct of their talent and their work and their dedication to their passion. With Arnault, money was the goal.
When Tom and Domenico started out, Gucci was on the brink of bankruptcy. And within about 3 years, it's a mega brand.
My goal is to create something that's beautiful. Something that's so beautiful that people can't live without it. And when you do that, people buy it. People buy it, it makes sales. When you make sales, you make money. And that's what my job is.
Sales were really growing dramatically. Obviously, the genius that did it was Tom, not me, but still, I was there running the company.
We do have a very special relationship. I'm so lucky because I don't think most designers have that sort of business counterpart. He completely trusts me on the design side. Domenico, I completely trust on the business side. And so, in a sense, we can work independently, but together, which I think really makes us almost twice as strong as a lot of our competitors.
Gucci was a pioneer in so many ways. One of them was it was one of the first European luxury brands to go public on the stock market.
The stock just skyrocketed. It was a very exhilarating moment. Tom was very excited and very happy, obviously, because it was a new future for us. I thought it was fantastic. It was a very emotional moment for me. People, the years before, they told me that Gucci was a joke. Now everybody wants a piece of Gucci.
Dassault was very fond of saying, you know, it's like the first truly public luxury goods company because it was owned by the market. So anybody can come in and buy shares on the open market. But what he realizes then he, you know, starts to huddle with his bankers is that Gucci's actually vulnerable to a takeover.
I was traveling in Portofino. It was a weekend. We were actually sailing. And I received a phone call from a journalist about the fact that Prada bought shares of Gucci. Obviously, it came as a big surprise.
Prada had built up a 9.5% stake in Gucci. And that raised some eyebrows, you know, why a competitor was buying up shares. But that stake ultimately was sold to Bernard Arnault.
Gucci stock was going up, up, up. And he started getting bits here and there.
Il y a 2 ans, on avait d'ailleurs commencé à acheter des actions de Gucci quand elles devaient beaucoup baisser. Et c'est une affaire qui est dans les premières au niveau de la rentabilité mondiale.
What Mr. Arnault's rationale was is that he was buying the shares for investment purposes. But nobody believed that.
Even though Arnault had passed on Gucci a few years before, all of a sudden it's like the newest shiny object. And he wants it for himself.
Mr. Arnault wanted Tom Ford oh so badly. He really could see that Gucci would be the perfect addition to the LVMH stable. It was a red-hot brand, it was selling like crazy, and that would be a great feather in his cap if he could get that brand.
I talked to a senior person in the Arnault team, and I said to this person, as a matter of good faith, I said, as we've been very friendly at that moment, I said, how many shares have you bought? And he said, I don't remember. And that started getting me suspicious.
It was like an earthquake. It was like all our stability and everything was put at risk.
My concern was very simple. Arnault, in the past, acquired company in a very aggressive way.
It was a question of being able to operate in an autonomous fashion, which we had been able. You know, Domenico and I ran Gucci as though it were our own company. And I believe that if you're going to be accountable for something, you have to be able to make the decisions that you need to make.
Tom and Dom are deeply invested in Gucci, and they are Gucci. This is a threat for them because there was no guarantees that Arnault was going to take it over and just let them keep running their own show.
I think that probably Domenico felt that in order to keep Gucci's freedom, he had to fight.
Joining us with the first look at the day's business action from London now. We may be witnessing a creeping takeover in the fashion business.
By early 1999, he had enough Gucci stock to launch a takeover bid.
After buying a 34% stake in Gucci, now the French company LVMH wants to take a seat on Gucci's board.
It was beyond stressful. We were very depressed. We didn't know what to do, basically. But we had a ingenious idea. First of all, we stalled Arnault.
They issued new shares to their employees, and that diluted Bernard Arnault back down to 25%.
Every time that Arnault purchased shares, we issue shares to our employees. So he was getting diluted all the time.
It was provocative, but they were looking at every possible defensive step that they could take.
Obviously, he went to court. He was trying to get the court to say, stop these guys from issuing shares.
Que nous contestons dans cette affaire, il faut bien voir, c'est très simple. Nous sommes actionnaires. Nous voulons que l'équité soit respectée. Nous estimons que l'équité n'a pas été respectée.
He had the stomach for this. This was going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight.
It was like a TV series. There were new developments every day.
LVMH sued Gucci, Gucci sued LVMH.
It brings a whole new meaning to suits. They didn't just make suits to sell in stores. They launched a lot of lawsuits as well. This was a very bitter battle, fought in courtrooms, through newspapers, fought in trying to influence whoever might be able to help each player's case.
He was using me and other members of the press as a conduit to the Dassault Ford camp.
Il paraît que M. Ford est un peu nerveux quand vous avez acheté les actions.
M. Ford est trop formidable, donc il n'y a aucune raison d'être nerveux. Si vous le voyez, franchement, dites-lui que moi je serais ravi de le voir, parce que pour l'instant, je n'ai pas encore vu. Je serais ravi de l'inviter à prendre un petit déjeuner. Si vous le voyez.
He's made a phenomenal success of the label through both his design and his sense of marketing and business. And I think that's why so many people like Monsieur Arnault are after the house.
At one point during the height of the handbag wars, the men's show is taking place in Milan. Tom Ford sends out the not-so-veiled message that they were fighting back. Ford sends the models down the runway with very sort of aggressive stance and baring their teeth and to the music of Psycho.
Now, obviously, the big talk in town is the big Merc and the big... I can't answer this. No comment. Do you think it'll make you stronger? No comment. No comment. No comment. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Tom, it was like my brother, basically. He supported me. He got calls from people claiming to be friends of LVMH. They want to talk to him. But Tom and I stood together.
They realize that with Arnault's advance, it marks the end of Gucci being able to be an independent, publicly listed company. And they're going to have to find a white knight.
And that's takeover parlance for someone who's coming to rescue a company that doesn't want to be taken over.
Dassault started talking to outside investors. None of them could quite make it work.
I was so exhausted. I still remember the state of absolute exhaustion. We were ready to leave the company.
And just as Dom and Tom were about to put up the white flag, in stepped Francois Pinault.
They really came a little bit out of the blue. Obviously, we were thinking about potential white knights, but I never heard of Francois Pinault.
C'est quelqu'un qui n'aime pas se produire, qui n'aime pas se montrer, devenir ce qu'il est aujourd'hui, une des premières fortunes de France, un des premiers patrons de France. Essayons maintenant de comprendre ce qui donne l'envie d'entreprendre à François Pinault.
Et il n'y a pas de plus grand risque que de s'imaginer que on a réussi, on est content de soi, rien ne peut arriver, et puis c'est à ce moment-là que tous les dangers vous guettent. L'angoisse vous reprend et il faut continuer et aller vers de nouvelles aventures, de nouvelles entreprises.
Pinault and Arnault couldn't have been more opposite. Arnault came from a much more elite background, upper-tier schools, high society. Pinault came from a more humble background.
J'ai fait mes études à 16 ans, un peu par obligation, parce que mon père m'a demandé de venir travailler avec lui.
He was a complete outsider. He started in the lumber business. You know, he went from lumber to distribution, from distribution to retail. And so for him, the logical next step was from retail to luxury. He had been looking for a long time at internationalizing his business. When you're in the department store business, it's very hard to make that global. Luxury had that potential.
Pinault and Arnault were sort of well aware of each other. They knew each other, but were really kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum.
I think Bernard Arnault is someone who thinks ahead very much and acts by stealth. Pinault is someone who will act very quickly on impulse. One is a lion, the other is a snake.
Pinault was the lion and Arnault was the snake.
Je juge assez vite et ma première impression est souvent la bonne.
I was approached by François Pinault. That he said to me, "We would like to talk to you." I said, "Okay, fine." Everything was done in absolute secrecy, so nobody really ever suspected. I flew to Paris. Big Mercedes picked me up, drove me all over Paris, stopped in a garage, waiting for me. There was a small Peugeot. I jumped out of the Mercedes, got into the Peugeot, drove around Paris, and ended up at François Pinault's house. And I really liked him. I don't know, just instinctively, he's the kind of person that you like. We hit it out immediately.
Pinault was very attractive to them because he was not the luxury expert, and he was upfront about that. And one of the reasons he was interested in Gucci and in Tom and Domenico was because of their know-how. They felt that they were going to be able to keep their direction under the Pinault umbrella more so than under Arnault.
L'art m'a fait avancer, m'a fait progresser, continue à me passionner fortement.
François Pinault had a very keen interest in art and in artists. And so I think the creative side of luxury, where some of the designers can be considered artists, was something that appealed to him.
He's the most decisive person in the history of mankind. He basically shook my hands. "I like your story. I'm going to buy the company."
And then on a Friday morning in March, they announced a press conference right around the corner from LVMH headquarters. And we all went. It wasn't even just the fashion press, but you had the entire French press, the AP, you had the AFP, you had Le Monde. We had no idea what was coming.
One day, just boom, we made the announcement that Pinault had purchased 40% of Gucci. We had a deal. Tom and I are totally, completely, and absolutely committed to the success of this alliance.
The whole affair, from first looking at it to signing a check for nearly $3 billion, took him all of 18 days.
We were also proud that that was accomplished under incredible pressure and in total, complete secrecy. Again, thank our for the support.
Then Tom Ford and Domenico De Sole announced, out of the blue, we are forming Gucci Group.
I'm less prepared with a formal speech, but really, we're very happy with this partnership, and I'm very excited by this project to build a group of luxury brands.
Well, you could have picked all of our chins up off the floor. Another luxury group, something to rival LVMH.
Gucci Group also announced that they had bought Yves Saint Laurent. It was one of those brands that you look at and say, wow. I mean, the essence of French style was very exciting.
This was one of those bombshell announcements that just rocked the fashion world.
Venons-en maintenant à cette offensive surprise dans l'univers du grand luxe.
Pour 18 milliards de francs, François Pinault s'est offert Gucci.
C'est celui de construire un groupe avec des hommes, avec des grandes marques, et d'une façon positive. Ce n'est pas contre M. Arnault ou contre quiconque.
François Pinault said, there's room for at least another player in this industry. I think Bernard Arnault didn't see it that way.
un pied de nez au numéro 1 mondial du luxe, le français LVMH.
It was a real slap in the face for him and sort of took Arnaud completely by surprise.
Vous savez, moi j'avais des relations très amicales avec M. Pinault, jusqu'à ce qu'il se lance dans cette affaire Gucci sans même me passer un coup de fil.
On a l'habitude de dire le jour où on va déclarer la guerre, le jour où on attaque et où on attaque.
LVMH had lost for the first time. Arnaud had lost for the first time. I went and saw him at his office in Paris as a reporter for Newsweek magazine. And he's talking to me like he does, very calmly and quietly and steadily. And it's just been blown out of proportion. And then he said,
Now he has found white light. But you know, sometimes the white light becomes a black light. So we'll see how long it lasts.
all these years we've been watching him and writing about him at LVMH, and I think it was the first time he showed his hand. He just told me how he operated. Sacking 8,000 people when he was the White Knight, coming in and saving Boussac, and Hubert de Givenchy showing him the door. You're the White Knight who turned black.
Were you disappointed at all with the Gucci thing, how that played out?
No, I was not disappointed.
And what are your plans for the future?
Oh, we have a lot of plans, but they are secret.
On a vu beaucoup de dirigeants de haut niveau qui, à un moment de leur vie, se croient invulnérables. C'est à ce moment-là que tous les dangers arrivent.
Well, it was game on after that.